My name is Fergal McPartland and I manage a community project called the Food Hub, which is based in Drumshanbo, County Leitrim, which is in the northwest of Ireland. The genesis of this project goes back to the early 1990s when a number of very significant business closures and job losses in this region brought about the creation of a new community group called Drumshanbo Community Council. And the Community Council has been involved over the past 25 years in a number of initiatives to attract enterprise and employment and basically jobs into Drumshanbo and the wider locality. So at the time, the building we're in at the moment was the old Laird's Jam Factory. It employed over 100 people and it closed in 1990 with the loss of all those jobs. There were only 700 people living in Drumshanbo at the time, so naturally that was a huge blow. Around the same time, coal mining in Origna, which is just 10 minutes from here, closed, and then a power generating plant also closed subsequently. So all those job losses in total, there was between 400 and 450 jobs lost in the area. So it was a devastating blow, and it really had a profound effect on the area. And obviously, whole families had worked in these businesses, so it left it a real unemployment black spot. So the Community Council was created to try and address that, and they were involved in a number of projects throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. Most notable among those would be the opening of Laird House, which is a community childcare and business centre located in the heart of the town. So it now employs, there's maybe about 60 people working there in that building, and well over 100 children in the community creche. And it also has a special respite centre for children with special needs. So it was very successful, and based on the success of that, the community group then took on a larger project, which was here, and the old jam factory where we are is a 32,000 square foot facility, just over 3,000 square metres, and it lay idle for all through the mid to late 90s. So eventually the community acquired it in the early 2000s and they came up with the idea that it was highly unlikely that we would get a large employer to come in and employ 100 people because of our location on the periphery of, not only is Ireland on the periphery of Europe, but Leitrim, where we are based, is in the periphery in Ireland. So we figured that the best approach was to try and maybe get 10 small companies to employ 10 people each. And this was the original ethos, and it still is. And we felt that if we could attract some small family businesses, it would be more sustainable. And I'm delighted to say, as of today, we're almost at 100 jobs spread across 8 different companies. So it's worked out really well, and we're 100% occupied. We've just opened 3 new food units, and one of them, a new business has already moved in, and we have 2 more in the pipeline for early in the new year. So so it's been very successful in those terms, and as I said, the attracting that employment into the area has been the key. And so I suppose the real important part at the outset was that the community group focused on one particular niche area, which was food and drink. So we didn't try to be all things to all people. We just said we'll try and focus on this area because there was a history of food production in this part of the county. So to be honest, most of the people involved were perhaps retired business people, and they saw the value and they wanted to give something back to the community. So they were the initial small group of a half a dozen people who got involved. Noel here was one of the main instigators of it, and I think he's going to speak to you later about that. From our point of view and our experience, there's only one: perseverance.
Brilliant.
That's it, because you'll meet so many obstacles that we could have given up on a dozen occasions, and we would have met and come very close at times to say, look, this is too big a project, it's not working, we're not getting the support, we've no money, we're going to be in debt, we have no potential businesses coming in, all the reasons in the world not to go, but it's purely, it was perseverance and I suppose a feeling among the group that, listen, it's not that we want this to be successful, but it has to be successful, we have to make it successful. So. I'll be honest, no. It was just a group that brought the skills that they had learned in all their years in business together, and another very important element of that was the people who were involved used the contacts that they had, which is very important. We wouldn't have even spoken about training, or was there something we needed. If there was a particular skill, we went out and identified it and brought that person in, brought in a bit of outside expertise if it wasn't within the group. I don't know why they kept coming back, but they did. It wasn't. It's like everything else. Once you get involved in a project and you get so far into it that you want to see it through, and while there would have been a little bit of turnover, basically a lot of the same people who were involved 25 years ago are still involved now, and I suppose there's a certain sense of fulfilment and satisfaction for them that. They turned what was basically a derelict site into a thriving cluster of businesses which are doing very well. Some of them are exporting all around the world. So it's been a big success story. By some creative accounting and things that we hadn't a bean at the start, so that was the starting point. We successfully, it was really Noel in conjunction with Momentum Consulting with Orla Casey, who's been with us all that time, who started the ball rolling, started knocking on doors and asking people for support, and that was even before they would have had possession or ownership of the building. So they may have told some white lies along the way to get a foot in the door, and but I think people, the actual idea was good, so people saw the value in it and saw the potential in it, and we managed to receive funding of about 1.6 million in the initial tranche of funding. So from a variety of funders, from the International Fund for Ireland, Enterprise Ireland, some cross-border funding because we're one of the border counties with Northern Ireland. The Leader program was very helpful to us. So that when you put all those together, we had a pot of money, and we just went ahead and we did an entire revamp of the building and gave a full food grade fit out. We needed help, yeah. We needed help, and we brought in a company who was practiced in that area, and because we had no idea. And as you know, or you may or may not know, a lot of these different funders all have different criteria, and there are certain elements that they cannot co-fund. So if you're successful at one funding application, you may not necessarily be able to get funding from the second. So it's a bit of a minefield. So you really need help. It's one of those areas where you need financial help. Obviously, one of the keys is doing financial projections. We didn't have that. We didn't have that skill set within the group. So we employed Orla Casey and Momentum. That would be a bit of a stretch because we didn't, to employ someone you have to pay them. Orla, out of the goodness of her heart, gave us a huge, and that initial start till we got up on our feet was extremely good to us, and without her we wouldn't have gotten to where we were. So you need to find people who of like mind and who will champion you to an extent, and if Orla had been paid on an hourly rate, it would have been a huge amount of money which we couldn't have afforded. So the biggest challenge we had was, it's one thing securing funding, but you have to have match funding, and that's for community groups. That's the real challenge. So in some cases the grant might be 75%. So if some people might have heard, we received 300,000 from Enterprise Ireland, and they'd say, God, you got 300,000, isn't that amazing? But you don't get 300,000, you have to spend 400,000 to get the 300. So that's 100,000 right there. So we were constantly juggling and around for those initial years. It was very difficult, and I suppose that's when the real crunch comes, that it really tests people who are doing things on a voluntary basis. It tests their commitment. If you're coming to a meeting and saying, listen, we need to borrow 100,000 to make this happen, and then people are saying, okay, and then the bank says, well, actually we want personal guarantees from your directors. So that's the biggest challenge that we have. So it's getting over that initially, but that match funding element is a huge problem. No, it's certainly sustainable now. We make a nice surplus every year. Everything is reinvested back into the centre. So we have 8 client businesses here, but they see the value in that, because everything that's done is done for communal good. So there are no private shareholders. It's a community group. So everything, thankfully, we've gotten to the stage. We're open since October 2007. So we've gotten to the stage now where we have 100% occupancy. We have a good rent roll in the building. And the only reason we've been able to take on projects like this conference room here in recent years is because we're generating income, and now we're able to take on funding applications where there's a match element, because we have a little bit of money in the bank to do that, which we didn't have 10 years ago. So we're not borrowing money now. So you have to have a business there first. So what you're doing has to be generating a return. So it's one thing to if you're refurbishing a community building or something, but you have to see eventually that building has to have a value, and it has to be generating an income. So it's that's really, otherwise, if we're not generating income, we've no business. And as a social enterprise, you have to invest money, you have to make money. So while we all want to have that idea of being for the community and for the greater good, you have to pay your way. So and I think Noel said the success is coming up in the morning and seeing the car park full, and seeing 100 people coming to work here, going downtown at lunchtime, getting their lunch, spending some money in the local shops, local people working here. It's that whole network of things that's the success. And instead of seeing an empty, underutilized resource, something that's really generating. When we started out, I said we received 1.6 million in funding. Well, we did a study there last year, and we're now creating more than 1.6 million per annum in payroll into the locality on an annual basis, and that's increasing. So I think that's a justification for the initial, while 1.6 million sounds like a huge amount initially, I think when that's been put back into the community every year, I think it's really good value for money. So. We do, because we've had, in the last 5 years, we've had over 60 visits from other community groups, from European agencies, from local authorities in Ireland, people looking to replicate what was done here. So, and we share that free of charge, and we give whatever information we can. There are no secrets here. It was hard work, perseverance, and a good dollop of luck along the way, and just getting the right companies to come with us on the journey, and the right people. And that's, at the end of the day, it's like any other business, it's the people that make it. So. Well, collaborate is hugely important. I mean, we would have linkages with third level colleges, and we would have gotten support from some institutions when we were starting out, and now the companies here take third level students on work placements for 6 months at a time, and it's gone full circle. But collaboration with all the local agencies, with the local authority, Leitrim County Council, the enterprise, the local enterprise office, have all been very good to us and very supportive, and you need to nurture and develop those relationships, because it's not just a once-off thing to get the place open. It's a constantly evolving picture where you have to be working, and you have to have different programs, and we've been involved in a number of European projects, and that's all vitally important. And so we have to continually develop and come up with new ideas, new initiatives, be constantly changing. It's not the same thing every day, but that's one of the exciting things about it. There's such a variety. Every day is completely different here. So we're developing the whole food tourism area. This room we're in, we're hosting school tours, training. There are buyer visits here. It's a multi-purpose room, and it's that idea of being, having multifunctional areas that everyone can use. I suppose the plans are probably twofold. On the manufacturing or production side, where we've now reached capacity here, so we have received funding to develop another food hub in the town, which is another food factory on the other side of the town, which has been idle for almost 20 years. So that project is hopefully going to get underway early in 2020. And then on the other side, the Shed Distillery, are opening a visitor centre before the summer, in the first half of 2020, and that's going to attract a lot of visitors to the region. We're very excited about what lies ahead, and this whole, I suppose, new vista is opening up for us now that we never envisaged when we began. The most important thing was that whole commitment to the project and the perseverance. I think that's key. Building up those relationships with funders, so it's not just to be happy to get a once-off grant, but to see what we can do on a continual basis, and how we can leverage additional funding, and how one area might lead nicely into another. And that's happening now. That initially our funding would have been for food production and infrastructure, whereas now we're sort of going more into the food tourism space, and that's opening up other possibilities for other companies and for groups, not just based here in the food hub, but in the whole county. And then I suppose the other thing is just to be bold, and not to be afraid of doing something different in a small town, where it would have been easy just to say, oh God, we shouldn't try that, or that's too ambitious. You can't be too ambitious, and the more definite people are about things, and you commit to it and go for it, I think it's a better chance of being successful, and people can see that there's a passion there behind it, and people respond to that,